thank you everybody for joining, and for those who are registered and maybe couldn't make it, we're just recording the webinar so we can share it after. But we just want to start by acknowledging all the traditional sacred lands that you're all on today, and we're going to do this a little bit differently. We're all here to talk about how we can integrate the beautiful Back to Nature series and First Nations perspectives and knowledges in the curriculum. So there is a beautiful example, or there's many of them, ways that you can connect to country in your classroom with your students. So I thought we would apply one into our acknowledgement. So just inviting you all just to take a comfortable position, preferably if you can ground your feet onto the floor, wherever that is, or onto the ground. And just inviting you even just to close down your eyes if you feel comfortable, or maybe look down and away from the screen, and you can just be guided by my beautiful voice. Just take a moment to exhale into country, just sitting quietly, and just start by observing your own breath and your own posture. And just check in with your body and just acknowledge how you're feeling now, whatever's coming up for you after a long day. And just take some deep breaths just to arrive into the space. And taking a moment to think about the traditional lands that you're on today. If you know the name, it's a good way of acknowledging them and saying the language name in your mind. And take a moment to think about the traditional custodians that have walked and protected the lands for tens of thousands of years that you're on now, and how special and how much of an honour and a privilege that is to be on lands that have been walked on and cared for so long. And just take a moment to pay your respects to the country in your own unique way and their ancestors. You just sit in stillness and just take some time to observe the environment around you. How the earth maybe feels on your feet, or the wind on your skin, or any sounds. Just taking away some of the distractions and the noise. And in your own time, when you're ready, just slowly maybe wiggling your fingers and your toes and opening your eyes if they're closed, and just slowly arriving back into the space. And just take a second to reflect on how you feel now after having that minute. It was not a lot of time, just to sit in stillness and appreciate what's around you and what we know as country and what we know in our DNA, all of us. When you go far back enough, we're all connected. So that's one way, in your own way, that you can acknowledge country with your students and take time, practice that. Mindfulness is a big yarn now in schools that we know. So just sharing that, and I'm paying respects to the Butchler people. Thank them for keeping me safe on their country, and extending the respects to all the countries that you are on and all your ancestors as well. So welcome to the webinar, our beautiful panel. We have our beautiful team at Culture is Live, as well as Ani Manya, who may be joining us. Ani has been an integral part of the Back to Nature series as the Senior Cultural Guidance, as a Bardi Elder and Educator and Director of Evolved Communities. So when she arrives, she can introduce herself and share a little bit of her role in the series and in the resources. But I'll pass it over to Belinda Duarte, beautiful Tita, to introduce herself until Ani arrives.
Thanks, Farah. Belinda Duarte. I would like to acknowledge that I am on the traditional owners country of the Narrak Wulum people of the Bunurong and pay my deepest respect to their elders past and present. My matriarchal country is Watchballock country, also got family connection to Dja Dja Wurrung, and it's a real privilege to have you online here today, and we're excited about what we're about to share. So really beautiful welcome, sis. Thanks for that grounding. I really needed it.
I needed it too.
Well, I'll hand it on to you. Sorry.
I needed that too. And Jane, in the chat, she said she needed it as well. So I'm a proud Yankajara Wirrunga woman from South Australia. I lived here in the lands of the people of the Kulin Nation for over 25 years, and I feel a huge part of the community and very much connected to country and to the people who live here and have walked the lands before us. So, I raise a beautiful son here, and it's a blessing to be able to have these elders as part of his life. So very grateful for that. But yeah, working at Cultures Life as an education writer and been a teacher for 25 years as well, and just taking a year off to see what it's like out of the classroom and writing for teachers to help them basically get comfortable with this of teaching Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander history and culture within their classroom and being a part of that change within our education system.
Thanks, Titters. I should probably quickly introduce myself as well. Sarah Brown, proud Yorta Yorta woman or Kuru woman. My grandmother's country is from the Bangarang clan of the Yorta Yorta Nation in Barman there on the Murray River, and the Dangala that I'm missing a little bit right now away from home. But education advocacy manager at Cultures Life. So I have the privilege of working with our beautiful team by heading up education and some campaign work. So excited to share a little bit with you in this brief time. So mindful we've only got an hour, so just really quickly what to expect. I'm going to quickly go through, obviously the Back to Nature series is probably a big ticket that brought you here. And shout out to Jane and Rebecca, the producers and writers of the series that are also in the webinar now. So if there's any series related questions at the end, please just pop them in. There's a Q&A section in the bar that you'll be seeing where there's the chat feature. So we just ask a little bit of housekeeping that we put any general comments in the chat, and you can do them to everyone or to the panelists. So there's a couple of options in a blue drop down. And then any questions that come up like now or during the webinar, please pop them in the Q&A and we'll save some time at the end to be able to answer them. I'm going to just go through how to access the resources and a little bit about these education resources in particular. And then the team will just run us through why we're here, and the title obviously being Wellbeing, but a connection to country and nature, and improving our education system on a more holistic, systemic level. But connection to country and custodianship, so understanding that from an Indigenous perspective, place, protocol, people, so run through some respectful practices, and then some practical implementation, so how you can implement these resources in your classroom. Nature and wellbeing, good typo, leadership and impact, and surveying questions. So these are the Back to Nature resources that you can freely access on Cultures Life's new education page that we're very proud of. We also have a partnership with ABC Education where they're hosted, but excited to have a bit of a one-stop shop where we can access all of our resources. So if I just go to here, I'll just quickly show you. So this is Cultures Life's website, cultureslife.org, and it is featured in the banner. But if you go to our education page, there's a little bit about what we do, our project aims and why we're in education. Cultures Life, we work on many different projects that ultimately support the cultural strengthening of our young people and the well-being so that they can thrive and not just survive and in this country, as well as help educate non-Indigenous people and work together. So we have non-Indigenous stakeholders and partners, but really proud to be working with the Back to Nature series team as well as there's some other resources here that you can access. So there's a big soul and generations piece that we do with Archie Roach Foundation, and Adam Goods's series. So some children's books and the Australian Dream, and there's more to come. So you can keep your eyes peeled on the education page. But if you click on Back to Nature, you will be presented with a login. My computer's going to go slow because the webinars aren't great. But yeah, so you just create a login, like a sign up, and then it can remember you. So it's pretty easy. You can even stay logged in. I just wanted to show you that so that we're able to, given that the resources are free to access, we hope that we can get a little bit of data to inform and improve our work, and have your email to share more exciting things. But this is a Back to Nature series project, and we have created a primary and a secondary resource. So this is the primary one, for example. So they're all in a digital format, and I'm going to add a PDF downloadable version for those who still like that. I know Auntie Shally does. But in the digital age, we've gone landscape. And these are the resources that you can access. So they're as beautiful as the series are, I think. So shout out to Sophia as well, our designer, who's on the chat. But yeah, these are the resources that you can access in your own time. These are all hyperlinked. So cultural considerations for teachers, and it goes into inquiry and discussion questions for the 8 episodes, as well as activities, resources reference. And there's a big list of acknowledgements, because there's so many incredible people that inform the content of this series. So that's all there. I can show you as an example, but yeah, they will have the cover page, an overview before and during screening, as well as your discussion, inquiry, questions and activities. So yeah, we'll speak through this presentation, but we'll just refer to some of the resources that you can use in your class. So that is that. I'm going to pass. Maybe just in case there's no one in case anyone hasn't connected with the Back to Nature series, just to get us into the land. This is just a quick trailer, as much as we'd love to show more, just to bring you into the land.
Being in nature permeates your body. How you walk, how you breathe. It affects you, physically and spiritually.
The sights, sounds, textures and smells bring your senses alive.
The land, like us, is alive.
You don't have to venture far from our cities and towns.
To experience nature in a way you never have before.
Come with us.
And slow down.
As we go back to nature.
So why are we here? That's the big question today. But what are we wanting from this? You know, let's face it, the last 2 years have been pretty horrendous with COVID. You know, they've impacted everybody very differently, and people around Australia in different states have been impacted very differently. Here in Victoria, we've been hit particularly hard by this, you know, and so have our students, and there'll be long-term effects. You know, we don't yet know what some of the long-term effects will be. But you know, this is a time now to really take stock of what's important in our life and making those reconnections or connecting to culture, not to culture, to well, to culture for us as much. I guess that's probably a Freudian slip because I feel like I've lost that connection through COVID, but that connection to country and to nature. So I'd love in the chat if you could write, during COVID, what were some of the ways that nature actually supported your well-being and your health during that time during COVID, and what you did to connect to country and to nature. I was sort of blessed within my 5-kilometre radius living here in Melbourne that I actually have a beautiful river and some trees that are actually protected now. Our council has left them and it's a beautiful 5K walk. So I was able to do that and sit by the water at times where I felt like I needed to have that reconnection. So I felt particularly lucky during that time, and I didn't get so much of a disconnect to nature, but I certainly had that disconnect from my people and that culture, thus the Freudian slip, I think, at the start. But this series is a beautiful way for you to reconnect with your students on country and with nature. So you would have seen in every single episode that Aaron and Holly, as you're watching, they actually became deeper and deeper connected to country. You could see it along the way that they actually had this deepness, like more of this spirituality about them, and who they were as a person was connecting. And it had a lot to do with the fact that they were connecting with the traditional owners of the country that they were on, and they were hearing the stories, you know. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the importance of storytelling a little bit later, but they were taking that time to listen and to feel country, and that's what you can see them doing it. So that's what's so perfect about these little, 27-minute little videos that you can show in class, and you can talk about the children, how they connect with nature as well. And it's about, reconnecting with your spirituality and submerging yourself within nature. But in Series 8, I particularly loved when Aaron was talking to the traditional owners. They were caretakers, and Paul Williams and Damien Ryder. And when they were talking, Aaron said, give us some tips on people who don't feel so connected to country. What can they do? And they sat there so quietly and so beautifully and just said, that country has a spirit, and we can listen to country, talk to the land. When you arrive, talk. Actually say words, whether they're in your mind or out loud, because the land is always talking to us. And to help you fall in love with country, so if you're listening, you will hear that and it will make you want to return to country. And I loved that. I thought that was really important. It is just about sitting quietly. It's just about listening and talking to country. So in the intro, when we actually heard it just in that little video as well, where Aaron actually says, slow down and join us. And that's what this whole entire series is about. I was saying to Thara and to Belinda when I first watched it, I was very much like, in my day, I was, still quite highly strung. And as he just said those words, slow down, join us. Like, I actually took that time to do that, to slow down. And that's what we're trying to teach the children and yourself, that you can take away from it as well. And it gives you, that peace and that tranquility and that comfort, and it revitalizes your energy. And and Aaron says it's just like as if you belonged there, and that's what we do. We belong to country. So today is about connecting and reconnecting to nature and really opening up your hearts and listening to country. So there's so much that you can get from this series. I absolutely love that it has got the word Series 1 in front of it, and that we're going to see more. I think that's really great. But in there, all the episodes. And I really liked it when Holly was saying, I think this is true too, when she was on River Country in episode 2, she says, to the river, thanks for speaking to us. And I hope our conversation is forever. And that's what you're wanting. You're wanting that connection to country, that forever. And also, I really loved it. This is what I'm going to end on, is in episode 8, when Aaron says that it revitalizes me and it prepares me for my next adventure. So that's why we're here today.
Thanks, Shao. Beautiful. Arnie Manya is in the group, so I'm going to promote to panelist. That's my first time using webinar. So Arnie, hopefully we can see you. Yay. Give it time to adjust. What a promotion from elder to panelist. Ani, you might have to, I'll ask to unmute. Let's see. Ask to unmute. Can't see or hear you at the moment.
Just to the bottom left, it says start video, stop video. There's a red line through it, Annie. So just press that button on the taskbar.
Hey!
And right next to that is the mute button. So you can press that line too.
There we are.
Hey!
Yeah, thanks for that.
Ani, would you like to introduce yourself to everyone
Yeah.
watching and and speak
Okay.
to
Yeah, Nangamaladi, everybody, we say hello and badi, Nangamaladi. I'm Auntie Manya. I'm from the Kimberley region of Western Australia, but I live in New South Wales now. And I run a cultural awareness business with my partner, Carla Rogers, online business. And we produce all sorts of programs and books to teach people more about our mob. So that's me. Yeah.
Thanks, Ani. I was reading your book on the weekend, actually, The Journey into the Dream Time, and you just have a beautiful way of articulating such huge concepts for our mob to a non-Indigenous audience. And I was like immersed in it. I finished the whole thing. So
That's great.
It's really beautiful. But Ani informed the series around like understanding country and custodianship from Aboriginal perspective as well as kinship. So I thought you could touch on that. So you're thinking about a lot of the audience now are teachers and how they're going to be teaching country and custodianship in the classroom.
Yeah. So one of the first things that I think a lot of people don't realize is that country is family. And that's why country is so important to Aboriginal people, because it's like a family member, and you speak to it and you look after country as you would a real live person. So that's one of the first things, is feeling that kinship. So you're automatically connected with country, and there's a really, it's important to look after country, because we have a saying, if you look after country, country looks after you. And so it's a reciprocal relationship where you're both giving to each other, talking to country, listening to country. And as Aaron says, it charges you up, it charges your lian, we say, your spirit. It gets stronger from being in the country and land. So kinship is part and parcel of that all. So very important. And the thing about kinship is that acknowledgement that we're all related to one another in some way, and not only with human beings, but with the plants and trees and stars and everything that's in nature are your relatives. And so often you'll hear Aboriginal people talk to the plants and animals as though they were certain relatives. I knew this Aboriginal woman from Northern Territory, and she was down at Perth one time. We were at Curtin Uni, we were walking together, and we walked past these tea trees, and she stopped and she said, "Oh, hello, my sister. Good to see you. Looking ragged there, sister. Let me tidy you up." And she went over to the tea tree and just tidied it up a bit. And she called that tea tree sister because in her kinship system, that tea tree was her sister. So there's a real connection with plants and animals like that. That kinship is really important. And that makes us, I think, belong, feel like we really belong to each other. So,
You I could just sit here and listen to you. Just like, do you have to talk anymore? But if anyone has any questions, I mentioned at the start, but for those who have just joined us, any general comments can go in the chat, and any specific questions can go in the Q&A, and then we'll open a little bit of time at the end. So any questions for Ani before we go on, you could just pop in there. So thanks, Aunt.
Yep, no worries. Yeah.
I can leave you up as panelists with us as we run through it if you like.
Yeah, for sure.
So you can smile. Thank you. All right. Ani Bin.
Thara, thanks, Sunny Munya. I feel like on this one, you've picked up a lot of what we were just talking about. You know, you referenced obviously kinship structures and how important that is to us as people, and really want to draw everybody's attention to episode 5, which really strongly has that theme of kinship, and that fabric of family and relationality really for who we are as a people. So, you know, it was beautiful just to have a look at, and Shelley's obviously acknowledged just the mix of things that people did through COVID and that connection to place. And it's one thing when we take ourselves and we are fully present in our location and connect to that presence. And then the next layer of that from First Nations perspective is really to ensure that we're connecting to place and connecting to the people itself, ensuring we're connecting to the protocols of that country and the custodians of that area, and really, you know, understanding that in being on country, no matter where you are in this country we call Australia, you are on somebody's country. And as First Peoples, we will always take that time to pause and be with that. There's some generic protocols which we sort of unpack in some of the resources, but there's some very location-specific protocols to think of. Yeah, and, you know, Aunt has already referenced that power of connecting to your spirit and the spirit of those around us, including that within nature. I'm going to hand over to Shelley, given our time's pretty tight, to do the next piece.
It's so funny. Your little arrow, my brain was getting confused. Is that my arrow or your arrow? So my apologies. That took a little minute for my brain to kick in. So respectful practices. You know, how are you building your cultural competencies? Aboriginal people are very interconnected. We are connected to self, community, culture, spirituality, and that it's just everything is interconnected, and there are some beautiful representations and visual representations that you can see on websites if you look up about our connectedness, not on our website, on the internet, that show how we are interwebbed, and how, you know, if something is weak, then it makes a spirit weak, and that's why this is so important to stay connected to country, to community, and to culture, and to make sure that we're looking after each other, and that kinship system is just so important. But to understand that, is, as a teacher, we're asking you to make sure that you are looking at your cultural competencies. Where are you placed? You know, like if we were all in a room together, I'd get you in a line and say from 0 to 10, you know, where do you lie with how confident you feel about teaching Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander history and culture. And, you know, people sit usually around 5, 3. Some people go, I'm really excellent. I'm like 10. I feel really confident. You know, even myself, I would put myself down at about 5, because I'm still, as an Aboriginal person, have so much that I can still learn from my own people. And, you know, I haven't gone through ceremony, so I've still got cultural competencies that have to really grow. They grow all the time. I feel like they do daily in this work with culture as life. So it's about that constant learning, you know. And a lot of people always say that they're really frightened about teaching Aboriginal history and culture, and that comes from not having it being taught to us in school. You know, I watched one video in my whole entire time as a primary and high school student, and there was nothing else. It was a video. There was no there was no post. In fact, it actually left me quite scarred, and took me probably 10 years to talk about it, because I didn't understand all of what was going on, and I'd seen quite visual genocide, and, you know, it took me a really long time, even just into an adult, to process it. So that's why you need to be really, really careful when you have Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children in your classroom, to make sure that you are keeping that space culturally safe. So one of the things is, being a teacher, is to put into cultural considerations, and there's a guide in the resources that you can have a look at and go through it a little bit more. So there's that teacher check-in. What do you bring? What do you still need to do as a teacher? What do you need to learn? And self-education is going to play a huge part in this, because we haven't had the education at school. So so what you're doing today is invaluable, but, you know, keep it going. Instead of those few 10 minutes that can turn into an hour of TikTok videos and Instagram, you know, spiraling out of control. Actually allocate an hour, you know, where you go, okay, I'm going to look at the history of my own country and understand what's going on and what has impacted Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and what does that mean for the children in my classroom. So always check in on yourself. And Belinda talked about the protocols. You know, we have protocols within all of our areas, and they're all very different within our language maps that, you know, if you've got, you should have them within your classroom and your school put up, so the children are constantly looking at these, you know, over 350 different language groups in the map. So they're looking at that, and they're understanding within each one has their own sophisticated religion, cultures, protocols, ceremonies, you know. So understand that when you do that, and that's by checking in with your local community, which you see throughout this series. In every single series they do, they're talking to a traditional owner. They are listening to the story. They're strengthening the spirit of that country by listening to that story and then sharing that story. So that's really, really important to have Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community members a part of your school. You know, invest in a local elder. You know, make that relationship. So when they see them walking down the street, they can yell out, "Auntie, uncle," and they can have that relationship with them, and they're confident and comfortable together. But making sure that space is culturally safe for your children. Sometimes it might be that you have to talk to the child about something. A lot of the hard topics, and not so much in this series, but in other series, you may have to watch the video prior to really understand how the children can be affected. They may be affected by past policies, the government policies of removal of children or from their land or from kin. And so it's really important you understand every individual Aboriginal child's story and what you can do as a teacher to make sure they're culturally safe and that they're thriving within your space. So cultural competency and inclusion training, that's really important. You know, always keeping your skills up, like what you're doing now, seeing what you can do for your school community, including families and your children and your stuff. That's why the local community member, like somebody, like I live off country, but I would consider myself a community member here. And I've worked really hard to maintain those relationships. And, you know, I often work within schools as a respected community member. I do say so myself, excuse me. But you know, there are elders that you know, ask them to come and do a welcome at your school. It's just so important. And a smoking at the beginning of the year, you know, to cleanse and start the year off. But you know, making sure that your school and community also, because this is such an amazing series, like you're looking at the environment and how we make an impact. So ask yourself at your school, what are we doing at school so we can lessen our footprint? You know, like my nephew's school at Alberton Primary School in South Australia, they have a jar, and the jar is this big. So at the end of the day, that is the rubbish that is only from the classroom. So from 35 kids, look at the big classrooms at this place, they have to work out recycling. They have to work out what is compost. They make sure they bring new lunches. And I have seen their jars and they're not even full. They're just tiny little bits of plastic. And then someone actually goes through those jars and has a big bottle of plastic where they put the little yogurt container, you know. So they're the kinds of things, you know, you are an example to your children. Be vulnerable. Let them know that you're also learning, that you are also on a path because you didn't have this wonderful opportunity that these children have to connect to Aboriginal culture and to Aboriginal history and to country. We didn't have that at school. So show your vulnerability, show them you're learning, show that you may make mistakes, but you're trying, and that you want to make this work, and that you're connecting with local community to make it the best that you possibly can. But check out the considerations in the guide. It's fuller. It helps you with that. And there are a lot of services and Aboriginal people that are willing to help. So thank you.
Ultimately, the significance of language for First Nations people allows for concepts that are often not understood in the broader community. You look at languages overseas and how certain words don't mean the same things in the English language. And Animanya, you know, I'm sure you've got heaps of examples up your way around different words that can connect. You've got Dadiri there. I've got Nunilla in there. Nunilla for Wagaya, our language group, is to really continuously listen, so deeply and continuously listen. Thinking through what mindfulness means versus connection, what that means from a cultural perspective, you know, spirituality and the discussions around that, where creation stories and dreaming really interplay with connection to country and, you know, connection to culture ultimately. There's over 300 plus language groups across this country. And we often get asked, well, why would we want to revitalise those languages where they are not current? An elder once said to me, those words are from that country. It comes from that country. It comes from nature. So the land that you are on. And in connecting with the language of that land, you are innately connecting with that country. And when I see the impact for our young people who have the highest rates of suicide, one of the highest rates of suicide internationally, all of the evidence shows if they're not, or they're disconnected from culture, you can have them in schools, you can have them employed, you can have them in safe housing, but life experiences won't change. So language can be a critical pathway to reconnecting to culture and therefore place and country, whether it's the country you're living on or it's your homeland's country. And from, when I've seen young children and students connect to language of the schools and the country that they live on, they build pride and connection to that country in a whole other different way. So, there's some examples of beautiful words from different nations across our country. And sorry for the intersection. At 5 o'clock on a Wednesday night, my daughter has managed to land loudly.
Thank you.
Tara, your turn, Dale.
I just want to acknowledge in that slide as well, obviously the left-hand side is English and the right side is language, but they don't necessarily, that's not the definition on either. So like Mulana means spirit in Yorta language, not mindfulness, but it was just an example that there's a lot of English words that we use, but I always think even Mulana at home, we know it means spirit, but like how would it have really been translated? Like that's one word in English, but it means so much more. And that's what is just such the beauty, like you just feel so much speaking and learning language. I think it's really beautiful. So the more we can integrate it into our education system and you can engage your local community and find out what these words mean in the language of the country that you're on, like how beautiful would that be for our young people? So that excites me a lot. But the title of this webinar has wellbeing in it. It was a little bit confusing. Wellbeing for teachers and students. Probably sound like the webinar was for students, but there was intention around putting both teachers and students in the title, in that teachers need to be the role model in how they prioritise their own health and how they look after the environment around them, how they connect and look after country, so that then we can role model that to our students. So if we're spending too much time on screens and we're highly anxious and the list goes on, we know that that goes on to our students and young people around us and others in general. So when Shally was talking about the cultural considerations guide before, and step one is teacher check-in, that's that vulnerability piece with yourself. Like, where am I on a spiritual level, and where is like my well-being, my health and well-being, but also like where am I on an understanding of these concepts as well, and what has been my relationship and interaction with Aboriginal Australia, and really acknowledging that and telling your students as well. So within that, when we're talking about wellbeing, the benefits of nature, I'd sort of put together on the next slide that there's ways that we articulate how country's healing for us, and then there's scientific evidence as well. So it is nice for that sort of, I don't know, this science, but I think about that left and right hand brain and that analytical side, people like to know the facts so that it's real. But if we can mix science with this like deeper knowing when we're teaching our students, like we don't always need facts and figures, like what you can feel so much more powerful. So there's some examples in the resources, and there is also, so I didn't explain the ABC iView situation before, but it's written in the resources. So all the episodes are available on ABC iView, which also needs a login. Once you've done it, it's pretty straightforward. But there's also some extra excerpts. So the filmmakers have pulled together like a few little theme videos that are only 5 minutes long, and one of them is the health benefits of nature. So this is an example straight out of the resources, what you would deliver to your students. So watch the health benefits of nature, which is a short, I think, 5-minute clip. on ABC iView, and then write down some of the physical, spiritual, emotional, cultural, and mental benefits discussed in the clip. So they can just like write it all out on a piece of paper as the clip's going. And you'll see a lot in all our resources. There's a lot of that journaling. So just allowing students just to express on paper without having to have columns and lines and structure, and that's really healing for them as well. And to be able to just get their thoughts out and not always give an opportunity to speak in class. And, I'm sure a lot of the teachers understand that. So gather students' responses, and you can, this is just an example resource. There's so much you could do, but physical benefits, you can do it. I'm a health teacher, so this is classic. Putting, the outline of the person on the big butcher paper and putting all the physical health benefits inside, and then mental up the top and spiritual around the outside. And you can play with it and be creative, which we really hope this series inspires creative teaching as well. Creative thoughts, but yeah, just brainstorm some of the health benefits of spending time in nature. I can't wait to get into a classroom and talk to young mob about this, because the things they're going to come out with, we probably haven't even thought about. And how might the ways that Aboriginal people live and have lived pre-colonisation have supported their survival? So how are we the oldest living continuous culture in the world? And land and water and sky and our connection to country plays a huge role in that. So we can actually teach our generations, under us, to live longer through these practices and healthier lives, not even about duration, because timeless Masson in episode 3, his sense of time is very questionable, but it's about, improving our health. So asking students a lot of reflective questions in the resources. So how do you feel when you're out in nature? Take them out there, do what we did at the beginning of this webinar. For those who joined a bit later, ask them to sit still, close their eyes if they feel comfortable. Those who are sort of trauma trained know some cues in that some might not feel comfortable closing their eyes in front of a group of people. So there's an option just to put the head down and just to be able to avoid some distractions, and let them just really sit and feel and have a yarn about it. And there's also some activities about yarning circles. And I don't think we do that enough in mainstream education. We sit behind rows and desks, and it's not conducive of what we know that circle, the power of the circle to be, and where everyone's equal and not teacher and student. Just breaking down some of those barriers, but asking questions like, how do you connect with the place around you? So you could literally print out the resource and take it outside and do this as an example. You can do it in your classroom. You can pull the chairs aside and have them sit down. There's so many things you can do, but there's a lot of facts as well. So obviously we're talking in secondary school as well to subject-specific teachers. So how, if you integrate this in health classes, if you integrate it in science, if you can integrate, this in English in the way that I articulate their feelings, there's so many things you can do. That's your job as subject teachers, but there's curriculum mapping in the resources. But and there's a bit of fun facts. Like they talk about the oils that the trees release, and there's a scientific name for that that I'm not even going to try to pronounce. Science teachers. They are tiny, powerful compounds that protect trees from harmful germs and parasites, but they also help us and boost our immunity. So talking about what we've been through in the last 3 years, and we're definitely lacking those kind of health conversations. Like you could literally boost your immunity by going out in nature. And I think they're things we need to be talking about. So primary subject levels. But yeah, I just sort of pulled this to give an example, like the healing power of country, how you can explain what we've known for tens of thousands of years and what I'm still learning every day, especially as I travel on different countries. It just blows my mind, the cultural knowledge. There's, plants that create soaps and different medicines that are just incredible, and you wouldn't even know by looking at them. Native foods, the Wood Wide Web is a whole activity that's really beautiful that discusses like the interaction between trees and how healthy trees can help sick trees under the ground, which is really cool. So that's it's science, but it's also talks about, what Arnie and Ben and Shell and all of us have been talking about with that interconnectedness. we talk about the healing power of our ancestors. So from Aboriginal perspective, our ancestors still walk on country. It's not just a past thing. Like, we go to country and we feel the spirits of our ancestors there, and they're there for all of us. And non-Indigenous people have, had connections with spirits on country, regardless of your spirituality or religious beliefs. Like, we're talking about including First Nations knowledge, we need to understand that that is our beliefs, and that's why country is so precious. So you heard a tree and you heard our ancestors, there's kinship connections to that. Water, life, peace, presence, rejuvenation. I just wrote a few things, and Aaron Pedersen talks in the series, like, this is a medicine session. Like, he's just sitting there like, this is what our medicine people do. This is what our healers do. And it's all with nature. So one of the questions in the health benefits, they come up, the short series has the subtitles with everything that's written down in that science. And it's pretty incredible. Like, spending time in nature lowers blood pressure, cortisol levels, reduces risk of diabetes, boosts immunity, improves sleep, reduces symptoms of ADHD. We know how many children are on, prescribed Ritalin now. It's a lot. Can improve mental health, which we know is a huge issue nationally, Indigenous and non-Indigenous population, elevates mood. Time in nature can reduce depression, lower anxiety, increase happiness and life satisfaction. The behavioural side of it's really interesting, I think. Increase pro-social behaviour, caring, sharing and cooperating with others. We try to teach that as teachers, I'm sure. And the last one, incredibly, even just viewing images of nature supports relaxation and recovery. So we're trying to calm our students to be in the best state for learning. We can think about what our classrooms look like. But that's just a little bit about that. So if any questions arise, please pop them in the Q&A so we can address it. But I'll hand it over to Belinda.
Yeah, my nickname's Ben, otherwise known as Bindi. I'm really mindful there's so much to go through, and Aunt, please, if there's something particularly on this one that you'd like to add, I'd really love to hear from you as well. There's a question in the Q&A which I think in different ways each of us might even answer it in our own way, and we'll come to that after this. But look, each of you are going to be at a different stage in your learning on this. Some of you might be in a space in which you've only just begun that journey. Others might have heard this again and again and again. But the biggest thing that I talk to is about, it's one thing to know it, and it's another thing to connect to it and relate to it and really invest in, I guess, your own personal relationship with what matters to you in relation to First Peoples of this land. And sometimes that means doing the work on yourself, and well, actually not sometimes, all the time, and how it has affected, or how your upbringing and your exposure in society has affected your relationship to First Peoples here across Australia, and potentially in other parts of the world. But I guess whether you're a teacher, whether you're an educator, whether you're in a leadership position, or if you're a community member just interested in these learnings, we were really keen for each of you to really think about, well, what impact do you want to have? If you actually gain something from it, what is it for you in your role to mobilise those learnings, not only in your classroom, but in the school and the education system yourself? Making sure that that personal connection is made for you with the oldest living culture of the world, our oldest storytellers that have passed on for not just a couple of hundred of generations, thousands of generations, stories which are of this place. And there's so much to learn about the world in which we live in, nature, and how it speaks to us. And we've all shared, or a lot of you have shared how you've connected with it over COVID. The biggest blessing I had, again, like Shirley, 5 kilometre radius, I was able to be present with Naarm, the very ocean in the bay of Port Phillip Bay, and that kept me stable when I was very, very, very unstable and felt unbelievably challenged from a mental health perspective, from a physical health perspective. And in the isolation, it was a way for me to connect with the world in a different way. So you are the face, the direct face for those of you who are the teachers of influence, whether it's with Aboriginal students or non-Aboriginal students. Your choices every day and in your weekly routine is critical on mobilising these learnings. So I hope there's something useful in this for you, but we really wanted to extend that invitation. And Ani Manya, did you want to say anything to add to that, or?
Yeah, well, I was just writing something for the chat, but just that I think mindfulness and connection to country are one and the same. They're two sides of the same coin. They're not something separate from one another. You know, being mindful is all about getting in touch with your consciousness on a deeper level, and connecting with country requires consciousness or mindfulness. So they just support each other. And there's lots of ways that we can do that. Just through being in nature allows us to connect in that way. And being mindful is just being really conscious of what's going on and reaching at it at a much deeper level. So yeah.
I can remember an old aunt, an old uncle aunt, and you know, often people are flying over to India to go to yoga retreats over there and talking about mindfulness and presence and spirituality. And Uncle would just go, that mob, they just need to go to the river.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
and
it.
how that plays out around you, right, in your environment, and being present and, you know, connecting. The way to say it just makes me smile with joy.
Yeah, Mingley McGlade, an elder in Western Australia, she used to always say, what these white fellas going off to India for? You know, it's all here. They just have to connect with things here. And so true.
Yeah. Just to finish off, we'd just ask everybody, would love to hear from you how you've connected either to the yarn now or just any questions, info@cultureislife.org. And if you want to share your work on socials, would love to hear. You know, we spend so much time, we put so much of our heart and passion and minds and collective knowledge into these resources, and we don't get to be in every school, you know, feeling them and watching them, you know, connect with our young people. So we love to hear how the resources are being used in the school and any feedback. So please share your work, whether email or socials, Cultures Life, and you can tag us as well, Cultures Life and Back to Nature AU. But thanks for joining, and for those who are watching it after time, please reach out any questions or comments. Thank you.